Welcome to 9 Mile Road, the official podcast of the Grand Lodge of Virginia, Ancient, Free, and Accepted Masons. I'm your host, Worshipful Jason Himsey. Each week, we sit down with lodge leaders, scholars, and community guests to explore Masonic history, leadership, lodge best practices, and issues that matter to Masons, and to curious listeners beyond the craft. Whether you're a brother, a family member, or simply interested in what Freemasonry stands for, you're welcome here. Now, let's begin. Hello, I'm Worshipful Brother Jason Himsey, and today I'm with Most Worshipful Matt Zermowski for a discussion that's important to all Masonic lodges, guarding the West Gate. Welcome, Most Worshipful.
It's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to having the opportunity to discuss the importance of why we need to guard the West Gate and look at who we're admitting to our fraternity.
Great. Well, we'll go ahead and get right into the questions. On our petition, it states, if in the circle of your acquaintance, a person applies to you who may be desirous of being initiated into the secrets of Masonry, be particularly careful not to afford him any encouragement unless you are convinced he will conform to our rules, in which event you may refer him to those who have authority to recommend him to the lodge, that the honor, glory, and reputation of the institution may be firmly established, and the world at large convinced of its good efforts. What does that all mean?
Well, we all want Freemasonry to grow, but it's important that we ensure that each of the men who petition our lodges are the highest moral character, that they're willing to learn and accept our obligations, traditions, and customs, that they petition a lodge that meets their interests. Each lodge has its own character, its own differences, that they will be a positive asset to the lodge, that the petitioners understand what Freemasonry is, and just as importantly, what it's not. And we need to remember that recruiting is unmasonic. Men have to come to us of their own free will and accord.
How many and what are the requirements to become a Freemasonry in Virginia?
There actually are 8. People often forget some of these, but I'll go over them real quickly. First, of course, the candidate has to be a man. We are a fraternal organization. They have to be at least 18 years of age. Very importantly, the candidate must believe in a supreme being. We don't determine what faith the man has to follow, but he does have to believe that there is a God. He must be of good moral character. The candidate must have lived in Virginia for a minimum of 1 year. He needs to have 2 Masonic vouchers in a lodge recognized by the Grand Lodge of Virginia. He must agree to and pass a criminal background check, and he has to pay the appropriate fees in advance.
Since we can't recruit members, what can we do to grow membership?
There are quite a few things we can actually do. One is lodges can hold a Bring a Friend program, which is an opportunity to bring non-members, including wives, children, to the lodge and give them an explanation of the history of Freemasonry, what a fraternity is, what the organization does for its members. Individuals that attend this event get a chance to learn more about Freemasonry. And at the end of a proper Bring a Friend program, they're told that if they're interested in joining, they need to seek out the individual that invited them, because we do not recruit, and that person can help them with the next step, obviously getting the petition. We can invite non-Masons to a breakfast, a dinner, any event at the lodge that's not tiled. And I'd encourage all brethren to do this. It's a great opportunity to bring non-Masons in to learn about who we are. And at some point, if that man is there at a breakfast with 20 other Masons sitting around eating and talking, I can't imagine he's not going to ask the question, so what is Freemasonry all about? And if he does get interested, the next one will probably be, what's the first step I need to take to join? We can support our Masonic youth groups. In many cases, particularly with DMLA, these young men will grow up and many of them will decide to petition a Masonic lodge. But also with Joe's Daughters and Rainbow Girls, often a father, an uncle, a grandfather may decide to join after they see what Freemasonry is doing for their daughter, their granddaughter, their niece. And one day when they get older and get married, their husbands may be attracted to fraternity. So we leave a good impression with them, and it gives fertile ground for future membership. We can share Grand Lodge brochures with someone who asks a question, who wants to know more about Freemasonry, such as the What is Freemasonry brochure. We can partner with like-minded community organizations on special events. A good example of this would be perhaps on Memorial Day, we do something with our local American Legion or VFW post. It's another organization that believes in things like patriotism and service and fellowship, a group that has much in common with us. And perhaps most importantly, we can share our love of Freemasonry with others.
What if the petitioner does not know any Freemasons? How can he obtain 2 members to vouch for him?
That's a really good question, Jason. Remember in the entered apprentice charge that we discussed that if anybody approaches us, we should go to somebody knowledgeable to make sure that the candidate understands the fraternities. That's part of our job, to explain to him and to make sure that his interest is sincere and he's motivated for worthy reasons. One of the first things I do if somebody comes to my lodge that doesn't have any Masonic acquaintances is I ask him if he has any Masonic family members or friends in a lodge we recognize. If the candidate says no, the next step is 2 brethren. We're going to have to develop a relationship with him. This could take a little while. It could take 6 months to a year. And the important thing is to tell the candidate up front why that relationship needs to be developed. These men are going to vouch for him, that they know his character, and that beyond doubt, he has the qualifications to be a Mason. Really important to do properly. Prior to petition, we need to ensure that he is a moral man, that he acts on good behavior. And a really critical issue if he's married is to make sure his wife understands what Freemasonry is and is supportive.
What do you need to do when turning in a petition?
Well, it's important to make sure the petition has to be complete in full in the handwriting of the individual. It can't be typed. The signers, vouchers can't complete the petition. It has to be done by the petitioner. An important thing to remember is that if he has been charged or convicted of any criminal offense, and we're not talking about minor traffic infractions, there needs to be an explanation on the back. We want to do this so the candidate's not embarrassed when his petition comes up and questions are asked that perhaps the investigating committee of the vouchers don't know. It does have to be signed by 2 vouchers who are members of a lodge recognized by the Grand Lodge of Virginia, and it has to be turned in with all the appropriate fees. And now we've changed our process. Once that petition is read and the secretary submits it to the Grand Lodge, the information, he will receive by email a criminal background check application, and he'll pay the fee for that.
What is the investigating committee's role? What expectations?
The investigating committee plays a really important role. They're supposed to be a neutral group of brethren. They don't know the candidate. They're not the vouchers. They're not related to the candidate. That will go out and meet with him. And it gives us kind of a secondary check to make sure he's a worthy candidate. They're appointed by the worshipful master, and ideally he would do that the night the petition is read. It should consist of 3 members, and I would recommend having it chaired by a past master if possible. The expectation is to meet with the candidate in their home. That's really important because that gives you a chance to see how he lives, to understand more about him, perhaps his interests and hobbies. His wife, if married, should be invited in towards the end of the meeting to see if she has any questions as well. And it's a great opportunity for them to really learn about his home life and the kind of man he is. The committee ought to show up in coat and tie to give a good impression. And their job during that discussion with the candidate is both to answer any inquiries he has, any questions he has about Freemasonry, but for the committee to find out and confirm that he is a good moral character, that he believes in a supreme being, and then again to answer any questions he may have. Usually a properly done investigating committee will have a meeting with the candidate for about an hour to an hour and a half.
What needs to be completed prior to balloting on a petition?
There are several steps that have to be done that are really important. Of course, we have to make sure that he did the criminal background check. Sometimes we have candidates who say, gosh, I haven't seen anything. It goes into their spam or their junk folder. So we need to make sure they've responded to that, and that has been completed. The ballot cannot be held on the petition without that criminal background check being completed. Both vouchers for the petition either need to be present to speak on his behalf, or if they cannot, they need to provide written recommendations in advance. The investigating committee should give a full report. That's really important. Often our investigating committees just come back and say, the committee's positive in favor of Mr. Smith. And nothing wrong with that, but isn't it much better if we can give a little more detail? We met with Mr. Smith at his house last month. We found out he has the following hobbies. Here's the house of worship he attends, and some other information to help the brethren have a little more insight into the candidate they're about to vote on. The night that the petition is read for the second time, the brethren in the lodge will have the opportunity to speak for or against the petitioner, as well as the vouchers. It's important to remember that only members of the lodge may vote on the petition. If there's visiting Masons, while they can stand up and speak for or against the candidate, they cannot vote on it. If there is one black cube after the ballot has gone through the room, it's been circulating, it can't go out and be circulated a second time if there's one black cube. If there is more than one black cube or multiple, the petition is rejected. And if after it is circulated a second time, if a black cube appears again, the candidate also will fail and not be able to be initiated into the mysteries of Freemasonry.
What should go into a member's decision process on how to vote on a petition?
Well, it's important to remember that by our Masonic law, the only reason a member is supposed to reject a candidate is for moral character. Now, what does that mean? The Grand Lodge of Virginia does not list 100 items that are moral and 100 that are immoral. Why do we not do that? Morality comes from the Creator, from our God, not from man. So it's up to each member when they ballot on a petition after they've heard everything from the vouchers, other brethren wish to speak, the investigating committee, to determine, is this a moral man according to my beliefs, or is it not? And if the candidate is not, they should reject him. If he is, they should vote for him. But that is the only reason to reject a candidate, is for moral character. It's important to remember that no one is supposed to discuss how they balloted, whether it's favorable or negative towards the candidate. That's actually a Masonic offense. Every member is required to vote with the exception of the tiler, and it's optional for him. If the tiler does wish to ballot, the worshipful master should arrange that prior to the communication so that he can be relieved to ballot, and usually the marshal will take his place or some other officer or member, and then he will go back out and tile again. It's important to remember that no one can leave the lodge room for any reason during the ballot. If somebody does, the entire process must be repeated if this happens before the ballot has been declared. And the last thing is, we're going to hope for positive results. And at the end of the night, I really encourage all of our secretaries, they should notify the candidate that evening, give them a call, send them an email. And I really encourage our masters to have already picked a date for an apprentice degree, so that when that secretary notifies him, he can say to him, hey, 5 weeks from now, we're going to initiate you. And here's the time where you need to be and the fee you need to bring that night.
Well, most worshipful, this has been very enlightening. A lot of good information for the brethren here in the Commonwealth, as well as for prospective candidates.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Guarding the West Gate is one of the most important things that we as Freemasons need to do to ensure the growth and the quality of our fraternity in the future. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
All right. Take care. Thank you for joining us on this episode of 9 Mile Road, the official podcast of the Grand Lodge of Virginia, Ancient Frame Accepted Masons. If you have questions about today's episode, or if you're interested in learning more about Freemasonry, please visit the Grand Lodge of Virginia online at www.grandlodgeofvirginia.org or explore www.beafreemason.org and complete the I'm interested form. Until next time, thank you for listening and travel safely.